Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night version of the Sportz Krib. Had some very exciting playoff games, some rumors, some hiring changes, some firings. So let's kind of get off into the program here. I see Dave is here and Bill is here. How are you guys doing tonight?
Whew. It's been an interesting week. I don't know what it's been like for you guys, but the good news is today we are in the double digits today.
Is that double digits above or below freezing?
And today we're double digits above freezing.
Well, look, Bill, if you saw the picture that I posted Sunday of Dave sitting down there at Buffalo Stadium.
Oh yeah, I saw the picture.
I don't think Dave has very much sympathy for you, but Dave, how was your trip to Buffalo?
Still thawing out.
Right.
Oh man, like I said, man, I've been in a lot of cold places, but Buffalo is absolutely one of the coldest. And Dave, I have to commend you. Not only did you go to the Steelers game and sit in the snow, but you paid to go sit in the snow.
And had to shovel my own seat out.
But that has been a tradition in Buffalo Stadium for the longest.
Mm-hmm.
Where the fans have to come in and shovel their seats off and sit down. But Dave, I'm sure that you will now enjoy the confines of Three Rivers.
I tell you, the Buffalo Stadium is not a very nice facility. I mean, the way the buddy I was with, the way he described it when we first got there, he goes, "This is like a college stadium," and he wasn't talking Beaver Stadium or Michigan Stadium. And one of the difficulties there's not many options to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the egress, we were sitting in our parking lot 90 minutes after the final whistle was blown before we started to move. And they're building the new stadium in Buffalo, which is it's scheduled to be open in 2026. But they're building it right in the same vicinity. So number one, the geography remains the same. They're the same distance from the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to continue to get pounded by lake effect snow.
Yes.
And plus, unless the civil engineers have come up with some type of traffic flow plan, they're going to continue to have problems getting people out of that stadium, whether it's good weather or bad. So they may end up with a state-of-the-art stadium, but it's still going to be difficult to get to and get away from, before and after a game. I was just a little surprised by it. And the other thing that I heard on the local news there is that they were talking about, I think maybe 2025 that they may have to seek swing space. They may have to go to another stadium.
Nice.
So they've even been talking about Beaver Stadium down at Penn State to host some Bills games as a possibility as they finish up the build out of the new stadium. Because right now it's just a pit. I mean, it's
right. They've excavated, but little else.
Yeah. Well, that has, regardless of the gridlock going in and out, it does seem their fan base is very loyal.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, to brave that weather, hats off to Buffalo fans. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. And they, there was maybe less than 10% Steeler fans there. And there's more Bills Mafia that shows up at Acrisure at Pittsburgh games than
Yep.
Vice versa. They travel very, very,
Very well. Yeah.
Yeah. But was how was the planes getting in and out, Dave?
well. I drove.
Oh, okay.
Now with the where I was staying was like 3 miles from the airport, and so actually Sunday morning we only had 3 inches of snow on the ground where we were.
Huh.
You go 9 miles south to Orchard Park, they had 17 inches of snow.
Nice.
Just 9 miles. But when the Steelers came in, they flew in Sunday, and they had canceled or diverted most of the flights, but the airport was still open. And then whenever they came in, then they escorted the buses with the snowplow out front. So actually, they probably could have played the game on Sunday, but then the problem is it would have been without fans because it would have been very difficult to get to the game, and then idiots like me would have been trying to get there and ending up on the side of the road, causing even more problems. So I think at the end of the day, the decision to delay was the right one, even though I believe it favored the Bills, but it was the right decision to make.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was the right decision. I was kind of worried about the visibility on Sunday, but as you said, it did turn out that in Orchard Park itself wasn't bad, but it was all about the surrounding areas. Well, guys, let's get into some of our topics for this evening. And let me see. Well, of course, let's talk about Nick Saban stepping down at Alabama and his replacement. Bill, I guess since Bo isn't here, I'm going to start with you. What did you think about Nick's replacement? And was this a hire that you saw coming?
I won't go so far as to say I saw it come. I worked backwards. I had a little short list in my mind of people I thought would have a good chance to get that job. I kind of secretly hoped that Sharon Moore would at least get an interview. But, I've known Coach Moore for a while. He and I follow each other on Twitter. We talk occasionally in DMs since he was a tight end coach in the MAC, right? So I've been a big fan of Sharon Moore for a long time. And I still think he's one of the most bright, most talented young coaches in football. Somebody is going to get a great head coaching candidate when his time comes. But obviously Lane Kiffin is a name that always gets bandied about when one of the top SEC jobs. People jokingly bring up Bo Fisher. That's not going to happen, obviously. But Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach and has been for a long time. I remember Kalen DeBoer as a Division II all-conference linebacker back in the day, right? Kalen DeBoer was a terrific linebacker many years ago. Scouted him as a player because I'm old. But the great thing about what he's going to do, and they're going to lose. I mean, we've seen the exodus. They're going to be fine for two reasons. One is a lot of those players wouldn't have really aligned with what Kalen DeBoer wants anyway, in terms of what he wants to do, the kind of program he wants to run. He's fine with 3 and 4 stars, quite frankly. Now, this is not what they're used to at Alabama, being a merely a 3.5 star program. To them sounds like an insult, but they're going to be just fine. He's also going to hit the JUCO ranks in a way that they have not in the past. So it's going to be a different looking program because Kalen DeBoer builds differently than the way Alabama has most recently built their program. But to talk about to focus on what I think you're going to see. One is they're going to replace, obviously, a really good strength and conditioning program with another great strength and conditioning program. So Kalen DeBoer that's one of the things that's going on right now. Kane Womack, who is who was at South Alabama, is moving slightly west and north, if my Alabama geography is right, to Tuscaloosa. And also Matt Shahid is coming as well, who previously was both at Ole Miss and LSU. So they're going to have a different approach to strength and conditioning. They're going to evaluate and develop differently. They're going to build differently. And so, yes, they're losing a lot of the biggest names in college football. I mean, a guy who's probably would have been the, when his time comes, with the top drafted safety in all of football. Caleb Downs is gone. They lost one of the top offensive line recruits that was there last year and played sparingly, but was looked to be one of the linchpins of the offensive line. They're leaking talent, and people are panicking. And if you had Alabama people here, they'd be all like, "Oh, they're going to be fine." Now they may win 9 games, which I know to them sounds like put black crepe paper around around the windows and sackcloth and ashes and wailing and gnashing of teeth. I get that, but give Kalen DeBoer 2 years. 2 years, not even 3, not even a full recruiting class settling in. Give them 2 years. They'll be right back to being a pain in the butt in the SEC West. Give them 4 years, they'll be right back to being a threat to win. In fact, they'll be back in the playoffs in maybe not next year, but the year after. And then they will be a contender again after that. And then, unless DeBoer gets hired away somewhere else. I mean, there's not really in college football much else to go, but he's a guy that NFL teams will be also kicking the tires on. But they'll be fine. They'll survive all of this after winning just 9 games next year. Oh, no, what's the world is ending? But, yeah, they'll be okay.
Yeah, well, hey, like you said, he does have a great reputation. I wasn't really, he wasn't one of the few people that I thought of right off the bat, but I'm going to have to trust Alabama think tank here and trust that they know what they're doing. It is very hard for a coach to follow a legend like that. Dave, what was your thoughts on the hiring?
Well, the thing is how many people are at the level of Nick Saban that are just sitting there available to fill in his shoes. And I think DeBoer, looking at his record, he's built a nice resume where it's progressively gone ahead. He was at Washington, okay, and didn't quite finish it this year, but still he got to the dance. But to me, the question is those are tough shoes to follow, and how much time is he going to be given in order to turn it around? I don't know that the Alabama fan base is going to give him 4 or 5 years. I don't think he has that luxury, and I'll be interested to see how that works out. Yeah. Because the school, they might want to keep him, but they are going to be getting extreme pressure. And he's coming from, the challenge for him is he's coming from a big, Washington. He was here, 2 seasons? And yeah, that's a Division I school, very successful, but I don't think he's experienced any of the kind of pressure that he's going to be facing being the head coach of the Tide. And that's going to be the challenge. And can he withstand that pressure and get to that 4th or 5th year where then his recruiting talents can take over and rebuild the team? But it's going to be interesting to see if the Alabama alumni have that kind of patience.
Yeah, that's question number 2. How much?
But they may not. They may have a choice, right? This job isn't as attractive as it used to be. Not to say that it's degraded dramatically from where it was, but just look at the NIL. People talk about NIL in the transfer portal, and often people describe it as if it's like this evil, horrible thing. But it makes being Alabama not quite as easy as it used to be Alabama, right? It won't be like Nebraska. Don't get me wrong. They're not going to right? They have too much structural underpinning to ever have what's happened in Nebraska happen to them. But guys aren't willing to be 3rd stringers for 2 years anymore. That's dead. 5-star recruits are no longer willing to be third stringers, fourth stringers for 2 years. They'll be a third stringer for a year. But the next year, they better be in the starting lineup or at least in like a rotational situation. And if that's not happening, right, they're hitting the portal. And then NIL, Alabama, trust me, they've got money. But NIL is sort of a leveling the playing field a little bit because Miami, just because it's Miami, right, can put together a collective, partially because of geographic location, all the different large businesses that are there that just aren't in Tuscaloosa. They can put together more varied and different types of NIL packages. They have more opportunities. USC is in Los Angeles. There's no major football program in New York. So, New York doesn't have the opportunity. Syracuse is way far away from the city. And, the closest thing to a halfway decent program since both Hofstra and CW Post was Hofstra lost spring them together and CW Post de-emphasized football, the way we call it. So LIU has a little bit of a program, but there's not much going on there. So, New York is kind of off the table, but Chicago has Northwestern, but Northwestern was laid off another place that was sort of laid off the line in terms of NIL. But Alabama, though they aren't as bad as Clemson, didn't get out of the blocks as aggressively as some other programs when it came to NIL. And I think Kalen DeBoer will help them with that because Washington did a pretty good job with it. So they'll play some catch up. But once again, like you can fire Kalen DeBoer next year if you want to, right? But the person you get to replace him won't be a move up, right? It'll be either linear, like a lateral move, or downward because this job is no longer the jewel in the crown it was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Because the world has changed.
Most definitely. Dave, do you think that Washington quarterback Pence Jr. Is still an elite NFL prospect in spite of being kind of run roughshod over by Michigan?
Well, I think that the NFL scouts they're going to base their analysis on more than just one game, and I would imagine that he's among the top 5 quarterbacks in this 2024 class, which means, he's probably going to be drafted somewhere in the first couple days. Will he be a first-round draft pick? I don't know that, but I would imagine that he's going to be, within the first 4 or 5 quarterbacks selected in the NFL draft. And then from there, it's a matter of where does he land? Does he land with a team that provides him the environment, has the elements in place, the offensive line in order for him to succeed, and the type of offensive scheme in order for him to succeed. So I guess I'm taking a long way of saying, yeah, I think that he's still a viable NFL quarterback and will probably be drafted among the top quarterbacks in 2024.
Well, Bill, we know that you scout all the positions. So where does Penix fall in your scouting strategy here?
He's my QB3. He's just barely holding off Jaden Daniels. They're very close together in my number, 3 and 4, and then JJ McCarthy is my 5. So the thing that Penix is mostly affected by isn't that game; it's his age, right? He's one of these. He's a super old prospect or whatever, a 6th-year guy, and he's had not 1 but 2 season-ending injuries. That the medicals and his age are going to affect how he's seen by NFL teams way more than 1 bad game.
Yeah, not as old as Bo Nix, but I'm pretty sure he's up there. Bill, Ohio State hired Ross Bjork.
Yep.
I think I pronounced that right? York?
Sort of, kind of, close enough.
Okay. But, from Texas A&M to be the new AD. what did you think about this hire?
Well, two things. One thing that is always going to be true about anyone from Texas A&M is they know how to get the cash going. And Russ Bjork, just like the singer, if you're wondering about pronunciation, it's just like her, is somebody who is known as a person that knows how to find the cash. You know, I mean, there's going to be no problems, no questions about that. And, you know, has been at Mississippi, been at Western Kentucky, and was at the time he was initially hired was the youngest FBS top AD, like, you know, not assistant, not associate, but, you know, top kick, whatever term you want to use, AD at the time of hiring. So this is one of the sort of, you know, just 51 now. So to have somebody with this many years of experience as a, you know, as a full AD and to be this age is kind of surprising. Previously also at Miami and UCLA, Missouri before that. You know, spent some time here, right? Was a Leatherneck at Western Illinois where he got his master's, and was a fullback himself back in his playing days at Emporia State, for those that follow, you know, Division II football, which I do. I do remember him a little bit as a player. He was not obviously an NFL type, but he was a classic tough guy. You know, probably if you were to throw all the ADs into a cage match, he'd be one of the last couple standing, if that matters. But, you know, has a coaching background, right? So I always like when, you know, the AD has a little bit of understanding what it's like to actually be, you know, involved in, you know, actually working for a living. But, you know, has been, like I said, a rapid climber, was an assistant AD at Missouri 22 years ago, which means he was 29 at the time when he first became an assistant AD. You know, they became an associate AD at Miami and was a senior associate AD at UCLA. And so when 13 years ago, before turning, you know, 38 years old, so 37 years of age, when named, you know, the AD at Western Kentucky, like I said, was the youngest AD of an FBS school at that point. And I've tracked his career a little bit. Here's the thing to say: he's gonna be very aggressive. He's very hands-on, and, you know, energetic. Like I said, former fullback, right? Very no nonsense. Is going to be very willing to wade in amongst the money, you know, amongst the boosters, and is not going to shy away from occasionally, you know, taking tough questions. Doesn't seem to mind doing the little things, going to the pig pickings and barbecues and smoke whatevers and all the things they do to various cows and pigs in Texas. He's going to go to those things, right? He's not one of those people who's going to sit in his office all day. That's not his style. He's going to talk ball sometimes with the, you know, he's not going to like get involved in like going to the meetings, but he knows football. He's a guy with a fairly strong football background. And while he'll certainly pay attention to the other sports, because you have to, when you get the AD job at Texas A&M, it's because the impact you're going to have on the football program, right? That's the beginning and ending of the whole interview. I promise you, the first question he was asked and the last question he was asked during his interview was about football. And he gave a great answer, I'm sure.
Wow. Yeah, I have to put this picture up because I am not sure, where do you find a cheesehead? Oh my goodness. Unfortunately, Demetrius is stuck in San Francisco, but I hope he gets a chance to see this picture. Good evening, Mr. Scott. How are you doing?
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm doing my best to keep warm.
Well, I noticed that you made sure you kept the top of your head warm. So, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a story about this, just briefly. There's a lady, when I was supervising social workers in Minneapolis, I hired a lady from Wisconsin. And I said, well, the weather, how you're going to get to court, how is all this going to work, and I would cover for her, but she was really diligent worker, just real great with an 80-mile commute every day, 80 miles every single day. And so when I retired, she snuck up behind me at the retirement thing and stuck this on my head.
Oh, very interesting story there. But you did come in very appropriately on a subject that I hadn't really broached, and that's Major League Baseball. We know that right now, the final cut for the Hall of Fame is coming down. Right now, I believe Berto is probably right now the only sure shoe in. But Mr. Scott, has Otani done enough to already be considered a Hall of Famer?
Well, no, not at all. Not already done enough. But what he's doing, it's just going to be interesting to see if he can sustain that. I mean, the idea of playing pitching and batting, I mean, this has become such a specialized thing now that that's going to be interesting how they play that out. And I think, didn't they pick up another Japanese pitcher too? Give it
Yes, they
another
did.
big
Yes.
bag. I mean, where are these people coming up with all this money? I mean, people say they have caps and they have these 700 million, and then Otani, he's going to defer, and so now people are jumping up and down. They're upset about that. He wants to defer a lot of the money, which is very sensible. Maybe he could be another Bobby Bonilla, where there's a Bonilla Day every year. But no, it hasn't done enough to be. And again, like I say, I don't know if he can pitch and play at this level or how long.
What's your thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, I mean, I think he's on track, but I mean, he's played 6 years. I mean, like if his career were to end today, would he be elected into the Hall of Fame? I don't think so. But heck, if he continues, and even if he doesn't have to both pitch and hit, if he focuses on one over the other, and does that and continues to get the accolades that he's been getting, well, then yeah, he'll eventually be in the Hall of Fame. But after 6 years, I wouldn't be ready to say, hey, you're in.
Bill, what's your thoughts on that? Too premature?
It's not only is it beyond too premature. The Baseball Hall of Fame is the most stringent, the most difficult of all of them to make it. If you're talking about the basketball, I'd be like, maybe. Even for football, he wouldn't get in with not just a short but injury marred, career. And baseball needs it's very much about magic numbers, hitting 300, 500 home runs. It used to be 300 wins. That's going to come down a little bit because you see very few guys get to 300 wins, but you got to at least get around that 200. I mean, with the exception of like Dizzy Dean, and Sandy Koufax, pretty much all the other modern era starting pitchers have been, I think 220 something is Jim Bunning, and a few others are like in that low 200s. But most of the guys who make it are well over 200. He's nowhere close. He's nowhere close to any of the magic numbers that baseball looks for. Dizzy Dean is 150 and 83, and then Sandy is 165 and 114. I can't remember exactly, but some of that. And then everybody else, is well above. Jim Bunning, I think, is 224. It might be next. He's nowhere close, right? If you're looking at his pitching numbers, he's not even in the ballpark. And then his hitting numbers are very, very impressive, but there's guys who've hit like him who haven't sniffed the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, so he's got to put together at least what he's done so far twice over, right? So if 6 or 7 years from now he's continued down this path, but I think his pitching is going to decrease as the time goes on. One, because he's already had 2 injuries from pitching, and a team's going to give him a huge amount of money, and they want him to play baseball. I'm assuming for the money that they're giving him. Since money is guaranteed in baseball, should he blow out, another arm ligament or something in his shoulder, rotator cuff, whatever it is, they still have to pay him, right? So I think you're going to see him being de-emphasized as a pitcher. I think you're going to see him spot start, relieve, emergency kind of, break glass in case of emergency kind of thing, 6th starter kind of that kind of stuff. But him being a regular part of the rotation, mark my words, is going. You'll see less and less of that over the next couple of years. I feel very certain of
that. I hear you, Mr. Scott. Let's talk a little bit about your Vikings here. Are we going to retain Kirk Cousins? What is your game plan for 2024?
Well, they're huddling up on that game plan right now. I mean, you can say, can you keep Cousins for a year or two, draft a quarterback, somehow move up into the draft and get somebody to sit behind him, a la a Love in Green Bay? Do you blow it up now? He leaves. You get a young person and start now. I think they're going to try to keep Cousins. He's already come out with some friendly words that he's willing to take a little less to stay with the Vikings. And I think that's what they're going to do, and try to really get a real backup, someone that they're grooming to put in after Cousins. I think that's the way to go. As long as they have Jefferson, and then there's talk. I saw some. You always see all this outlandish stuff on the thing. There's people about trading Jefferson and moving up, and I don't see him doing that. I think they're going to keep Cousins. I think they're going to try to draft a quarterback. That's what I would do. That you can sit behind him, and those things they don't exactly always work out. I mean, when Denny Green drafted Culpepper, he didn't want to play Culpepper. The plan was for him to sit. But then there was injuries, ineffectiveness, and then he had to play. And then with Moss and the rest of it just clicked. So, but I think they're gonna. I think they should stick with Cousins and draft the quarterback of the future.
Oh, okay. Bill, what are we gonna do with the Bears?
Well, I've been on the record as saying I don't think they do much of anything. Well, so we rephrase that. I think that they're willing to shop either of those picks, and if somebody's going to give them an absolute king's ransom, they're willing to move down from either one of those first round picks. But I don't think they're going to move on from Caleb Williams. I mean, move on from Ryan. Move on from Justin Fields. Ryan Poles, I believe, thinks that they're going to be able to develop Justin Fields, and I think he believes that the draft capital they're able to get will help them to do so. All of his machinations, all the things he's done for the past couple of years is to put them in a position where they can control the early part of the draft and have a lot of cap space. Guess what? They have both. They have 2 first-round picks in the top 10 and a buttload of cap space. So he's in a position, if they decide to draft Caleb Williams, they don't have to play him right away, right? So if they do decide to draft him, they can do that. But I believe that if somebody's willing to give them a king's ransom for that number 1 overall pick, they'll move down, get a buttload of picks, combine that with a buttload of cap space, and remake this roster. That offensive line particularly is a mess.
Oh, no doubt whatsoever about that offensive line. Dave, the Bears, the Commanders, and the Pats get the first 3 picks in the 2024 draft. Do you think that they will stand pat, or do you think that who do you think will be the first one to trade? Will it be Chicago, the Commanders, the Pats? What's your thoughts here?
Well, I mean, it's like for example, with the Bears, if they decided to stick with Justin Fields, say, I think that they would be better off trading down to get some additional draft picks to strengthen the team around them. I think that Washington, I think the Patriots, I think that they might want to be, under Bill Belichick. Now he was trading all the time on draft day, and but I don't know what's going to happen without the Bill Belichick uh, at New England. So there, I'm not so sure. And then also the Commanders, that's another team that's under transition. They've uh, they're looking for a new head coach. So I'm not sure whether by draft day whether they'll be settled on what they want to do. But with the Bears, I think part of it depends on, uh, hey, do we want to strengthen the team that we have and then just get some additional draft picks to solidify their team? And part of it is, okay, how much are we gonna cut bait with Justin Fields, or are we gonna keep him? So I'll say the Bears.
Mr. Scott, what do you think here? The Bears are in your division. We saw the Lions come up. We saw the Cheeseheads, as you advertised there. They're coming up. Where do you count the Bears in your division? And do you think that they're going to stand pat, or do you think that they're going to trade some of those picks, as Bill and Dave suggested?
Well, it kind of looks like now this is the best division in the league. I mean, it looks like, you've got the Packers, you've got Detroit. I mean, these are teams that could be in the Super Bowl. So, Fields started off kind of slow, and I had talked to some people in Chicago. They said, well, Fields is not the answer. They were just, but then slowly, I mean, he seems to be adjusting to the speed of the league. I think I like the prospect of keeping him and building around him. I mean, he's a known commodity now. He's pretty much known. And anytime you get into the draft, you don't necessarily know. You don't necessarily know what they can do. So I think they're going to rally around Field, and I think this is the best division right now. It's one of the strongest divisions in the league.
Okay, I noticed you put the Packers and Detroit up there. I'm sure Demetrius is recording this somewhere. So Bill, the Pats elevate Coach Mayo, the head coach.
Yep.
I don't know if a lot of people, saw this as a surprise, but it seems to me that the Pats have been kind of grooming Coach Mayo for this all the time.
Yep.
I was kind of, I was when they had Mike Vrabel in the Ring of Honor. I kind of, was a little hesitant on whether or not they were going to go ahead with plans for Mayo. But what are your thoughts on the elevation of Coach Mayo?
Sure. So once again, this is someone I watched play high school football at Kickingham High School. Same high school that people like, who else went to Kickingham? There have been a couple of good players came out of Kickingham, but that's in Hampton. One of their main rivals is Bethel, which is where Allen Iverson went. He lettered in as a football, both as a linebacker and running back in his days there. Then he ended up going to Tennessee. His brother went to Old Dominion, which is right in my backyard, practically in Norfolk, Virginia. So I'm very familiar with him. Watched his entire, career from the time he was a youngster onward. Was a terrific player throughout his collegiate career. A lot of people compared him to people like Will Witherspoon. He had a solid career as a player. Was a NFL Rookie of the Year in 2008. Made an All-Pro 2010. Was a two-time Pro Bowler. Led the NFL in tackles in 2010. And made the Patriots all-decade team of the 2010s. The Patriots have their own all-decade team, in case you people are wondering, because I guess you can do that with the Patriots. He became an inside linebackers coach, and though they didn't have a defensive coordinator by name, he and Steve Belichick essentially split sort of the job, though they didn't call it that. It got confusing for a while there in New England. But he had a really, really good run as a player. He's a very, very smart guy, a terrific young coach. And he was going to get this chance somewhere, if not there, someplace else. People who know how good he is knew that it was only a matter of time until he became a head coach somewhere in the NFL. Trenton Cannon, right, also is another guy that came out of Kickotan. But he's like I said, he's a guy that is I think anybody who ever saw him realized that there was a matter of time. He's going to be a good coach. The Patriots will need to be patient because, frankly, their roster is bottom 4, maybe even bottom 3, maybe in the NFL. I mean, it's a bad.
They need a GM. They need a GM.
If they were smart, they'd be looking at people like Mark Bogonzi, Tim Terry. I mean, I could make them a nice list. There's some guys they should definitely be looking at for their general manager position, but they haven't had a GM by name in a while. But yeah, they need to change their org chart, quite frankly. But that's a whole other show, so I'll let that be another show later.
Yeah. Mr. Scott, what did you think about Mr. Kraft hiring a minorities coach? As I said, Mayo had been in the radar for quite some time. Were you surprised that they went with Mayo?
No, I think it's kind of a Kraft move in the same. I think the overwhelming reason that he hired him is because he's cheap. I mean, he's going to come a lot cheaper. He's been in the organization. It's a safe thing. He doesn't have to deal with the Rooney Rule, which my thoughts on that is when it came in, the gesture was great. I mean, the idea of it made sense. But then when you get to a point of flying people around the country, putting them up to interview them for jobs they're not going to get, I mean, it gets to a point you see now a lot of these owners are being proactive. Guys are leaving and they're starting to interview right away. I mean, they've interviewed Harbaugh. They're interviewing right away. They're kind of trying to bypass, and the effectiveness of the Rooney Rule is, I mean, like I say, the idea of it. And then they thought at first, well, it'd be great to get people to come in, even if we're not going to hire them, they can see how things work. They can interview, they can see how it all works, and maybe that'll help. But I think when it comes down to it, these teams need to move ahead, and they need to kind of move when people are available. So, but I think it's a classic Kraft move. He's known to me for not paying people. He's known for changing the roster and being able, like Brady wasn't the top paid quarterback any of the time that he was in New England, but he was the most successful quarterback. So,
but that had nothing to do with Kraft. That had to do with Giselle.
Yeah.
Giselle made more money than Tom, so the Patriots didn't have to pay Tom. There was a little Giselle money involved there. What do you think, Dave?
I just hope that the Patriots are not doing Jared Mayo a disservice. He's been an inside linebackers coach for 5 years. That's the extent of his coaching experience. Not a coordinator, no college background in coaching. I don't have enough information to evaluate. I don't know. I don't know how much position coaches do. And yeah, maybe they've been grooming him. I'm just hoping that they haven't done him a disservice. The thing I'd like to mention about the Rooney Rule that some people don't know, I'm sure that Bill's very well aware of this, but that who helped craft the Rooney Rule and wanted Dan Rooney involved was Johnny Cochran in the Fritz Pollard Alliance. So although it has the name the Rooney Rule because they needed an owner that would champion the cause, that was the Fritz Pollard Alliance that was behind that move. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. But in any case, I would say that I'm just a little bit concerned the lack of experience. And because players play. The old adage is if you can't play it, coach it. And he was a great player, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great coach. And a head coach has different knowledge, skills, and abilities required than what a position coach would need. And that's basically, as far as what I can see, is what his experience has been. And but I wish him the best. Well, not really, since he will be the head coach of the Patriots. But I don't want him not to succeed. I'll put it that way. I just think that he would be better served if he had more experience.
Great observation there, Dave. Dave, I want to talk a little bit about the Falcons here. As Mr. Scott already mentioned, we have a lot of these coaches and former coaches already looking after positions. Now, according to rumor, I guess fact, both Harbaugh and Belichick have been visited the Falcons. Both of them have been interviewed for the head coaching position. But after the success that these two have had in other places, do you really see this as a designation for either one of these coaches, Dave?
Well, I mean, Art Blank is the owner, and I mean, how much, with Bill Belichick, he was kind of used to running the whole show. And now that he's left New England, now that they're going to have to reorganize the way they're set up. And how much is Bill Belichick going to be willing just to be a coach and not necessarily a general manager? And then the other thing is his age. He's 72. That doesn't mean that you can't be functional at that age, but it's something to consider, right? And as far as Jim Harbaugh, he's a little bit younger, quite a bit younger. He's 12 years younger, I guess, than Belichick. It would be interesting. Now he coached the 49ers and he was very successful there. And he seemed to be able to wend his way through that. If for me, if I was having to make a choice between the two, I would probably edge toward Jim Harbaugh, even though I can't stand the Harbaughs, but you cannot dispute their successes as coaches.
Mr. Scott, do you see the Falcons as a destination for either one of these guys, Harbaugh or Belichick?
I don't know, not really. The Harbaugh situation is interesting because he interviewed up here before the Vikings hired O'Connell. And they flew him in, and it was a big interview, and he thought he had the job, actually. And he came in, and he was just starting to order people around and tell people what they're going to do. And I think they got a little nervous, and they decided not to hire him because of that. I mean, that's what I gathered from it. They're going to have their pick of places to go, and I mean, I think that is Atlanta. I think Atlanta's a decent. They have a pretty decent setup. I couldn't tell you about Belichick where he'd end up. It seemed like he's going to do something like a Shula or some of the people maybe go down south somewhere where it's warm and just kind of chill out for a while. But Harbaugh, he's going to be looking for championships. He's going to look for the bag, and I think they're going to both have a lot of choices.
Bill, do you see the Atlanta as a destination for either one of these coaches?
Well, the Chargers, Atlanta, and Raiders, to my understanding, are like the top three contenders for Harbaugh. And I don't know if there's the same level of interest, though I keep hearing Atlanta's super interested in Mr. William Stephen Belichick. I just have to wonder, when you're hiring a 72-year-old for a team that isn't 1 or 2 years away, in my mind, at least, from winning a Super Bowl. It seems like a kind of quizzical, like quixotic kind of thing to do, because are you asking this guy to build a franchise, right? I mean, you looks like you don't necessarily have your starting quarterback. Your team is in transition in a couple of different areas. The good news is you have some very talented young players on offense, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and of course, the controversy that has surrounded the usage of Kyle Pitts. But all those guys are super, super talented and young and cheap, right? Cheap, young, cheap, talented. They've got some nice pieces on defense, though they still need to add to it, but there's some things sort of starting to come. It was one of the most improved defenses, from last year to this year. They went from being an absolutely terrible defense to a slightly above middle of the pack defense, which was a dramatic improvement. And that's what Belichick, of course, has always hung his hat on. So I could see him helping them, even if they are only marginally better on offense. If they get dramatically better again on defense, it becomes, say, a top, like the Jets or like the 49ers, one of those top 3 or 4 type defenses, they could then be a team that could pretty much run that division. Because, I mean, the Carolina Panthers can't be this bad again, but they won't be, that much better next year probably. Tampa Bay is an interesting situation. Now they're getting out of salary cap hell a little bit because they managed to sort of muddle their way through this year and, of course, won a playoff game. Shout out to Jason Light and everybody else involved and how they negotiated at the end of the last league year, they were $80 million over the cap. $80 million over the cap. So they had to make a lot of things happen just to get under the cap. And they managed it. They had to gut certain things and let some people go, and they managed to survive it. I mean, they missed Carlton Davis and some other players, not Carlton Davis, but the other one, Sean Michael Bunting, and some other players that were cap casualties. But they managed to pull it together. And like I said, they won a playoff game. So they're ahead of schedule, quite frankly. At least they won't say they are. They'll say, we thought we always knew we were gonna, do this. We were gonna win the Super Bowl, blah, blah. Everyone has to say that. But internally, I promise you, the front office is a little surprised by the way this year turned out. But yeah, the Falcons don't have the most difficult road, but hiring a 72-year-old, it's not a full rebuild, but it's more than just to slap a coat of paint on it too. They've got some remodeling, not rebuilding, but they've got some remodeling to do on that franchise. And to ask a 72-year-old man to do that seems strange. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, I guess Belichick interviewed with Atlanta, and it was a 3-hour interview. And then I'll be curious as to whether he gets called back, because to most people that sounds like a long interview, but for a head coaching position, I don't think that's that long of an interview. I'll be interested to see if there's a follow-up call.
But Dave, how many questions do you have to ask Bill Belichick?
A lot, because he's 72 years old. So think about this. You say you have questions about roster construction. So you're going to go through your roster construction. You're going to watch a little bit of tape. You're going to ask him about his philosophy of how he's going to build the team.
But what I'm trying to say is obstacles in building a Falcon team are no worse than they are trying to build a New England team when he's no longer the general manager.
Oh, I mean, it's not as bad a situation as New England. New England is a pit. I mean, their roster is so bad.
But they're going to want to know, well, who's his notional staff going to be? Who are his coordinators going to be? Who are his position coaches going to be? What is his plan for acquiring that talent? Yep. I mean, a head coaching job is very, very. It's much more intricate than a lot of people. It's just not going out on the field and. But
Bill Belichick is not a rookie head coach. I mean, this is
quite the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain things that you are going to let Bill Belichick do that you are not going to let Jared Mayo do.
But if I'm Art Blank, I want to make sure that whatever he's doing is consistent with what my vision is.
Right.
If
I'm
not,
gonna-
I want to make sure that I do a thorough examination to make sure it
your
works.
vision is Desmond Ritter as your starting quarterback. Please, come on.
Well, that's the point I'm making. Like we've seen Pete Carroll get to the playoffs with the following people: Tavares Jackson as a starting quarterback. He's made the playoffs with Seneca Wallace, I believe, one year starting quarterback. He's made the playoffs.
This is
with,
Pete Carroll, and this is
that's
another.
the,
And
but
this
that's
is
the point I'm
another
making.
70, and this
Right.
is another 70-plus-year-old guy
Correct.
with a lot of experience.
Right, but here's the thing: if I'm going to hire a super old coach, if I'm considering hiring a very, very old coach, why wouldn't I go after Pete Carroll, who is more energetic, players like him better, and he's shown he can piece it together without a Hall of Fame level quarterback to at least make the playoffs, and got to the Super Bowl twice with Russell Carrington Wilson, who is a good quarterback. Now there's some debate about how good, but he's never had a guy that everyone says, oh, that guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? All the successes he's had have been with guys that were either kind of patch it together, hold it together kind of guys, or very good to very good in Russell Carrington Wilson. We have not seen William Stephen Belichick show that he can get to the Super Bowl or even into the playoffs with, he narrowly missed the playoffs one year with from USC, the backup from USC. They went 11-5 but missed the playoffs. God, what's his name again?
But I really don't see the Falcons hiring either one of these guys or either one of these guys expecting
saying yes.
I would think that if there was a job that was I would even rate the Chargers job as much better. But
it is a
we'll
better
talk
job.
about that next week. Dave, Ron Rivera says he wants to coach again, even if it's as a defensive coordinator. Dave, does this kind of smack of desperation or separation anxiety, or am I just being pessimistic?
Well, I'm reading the biography of Mike Tomlin, and one of the things that comes across in that biography is that that's all Mike Tomlin aspires to be as a coach. That's what he wants. And maybe that's in Ron Rivera's blood. And I do know that Ron Rivera was actually interviewed by the Steelers prior to Mike Tomlin. And he was on their short list whenever Mike Tomlin was hired. And so to me, whether he's desperate or not, I'm not entirely happy with Terrell Austin. I would love to have Ron Rivera come in as a defensive coordinator for the Steelers. And it won't be the first time that a head coach is taking coordinator jobs. Now, sometimes under duress. Famously, the Kansas City Chiefs coach came to be the Steelers offensive coordinator. And hey, it happens. Sometimes it's just in their blood that's what they want to do is they want to be coaches.
What's your thoughts on that, Mr. Scott?
Well, Rivera, as a defensive coach, I think Philadelphia could use somebody right about now. And I think he'd be a good man for that. So, yeah, I agree. He seems like he's into the coaching. I also thought he was going to be the Bears coach at one time. It looked like he was there. It looks like they never really got to that position. So I don't know. But I think somebody like Philadelphia, him as a defensive coach, boy, I think that would be a good find for a team.
Your thoughts, Bill?
Once again, another player who I've, watched his time. He led the entire Pac-10 as it was in those days in tackles. One year they got 151 tackles, I believe, in an 11-game season back in the day. And he finds his way to Chicago as a reserve, a valuable reserve on the Bears Super Bowl winning team. Finds his way into coaching. He's, all the stuff you hear about, right? A solid guy. Players like playing for him. Not super innovative, not an outside the box thinker, a very much inside the box thinker. The Riverboat Ron thing was kind of funny, but despite the Riverboat Ron reputation, he's actually a pretty conservative coach. He went for it on 4th and short a few more times than people used to in the old days. But if you look at the actual way he puts teams together, they want to run the ball, play good defense, occasionally take deep shots off play action. Occasionally, not too often. So the game, I won't say the game has passed him by exactly, but the way that football is now played does not play to his strengths as a head coach, I think would be fair to say. But he's still, I think, just like Jack Del Rio, right? I mean, lots of guys have, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, have gone back after being, Dick LeBeau. Right. There's a long list of these guys that have gone back to being D coordinators after being head coaches. Todd Bowles, of course, he eventually made his way back up. Steve Wilkes, who is now being interviewed right now for head coaching position, was the guy that went from being, frankly, I think he was unfairly fired in Arizona. I think But I think they blew it, quite frankly. Steve Wilkes, I think he'll be a very good head coach somewhere someday. Raheem Morris is a D coordinator right now after being the youngest head coach in the league for a little while. So, and he'll be a head coach again, I believe, as well. So it happens quite often, James. Now, for a guy like Ron Rivera, it's probably, where he'll be if he plans to keep coaching as either a position coach or a defensive coordinator. I don't think he'll get another bite at the apple as a head coach. And I think he's okay with that. I think he said, I tried it. I made a good amount of money doing it. Turns out not to be the thing I was best at, but he's a guy that understands how to coach linebackers. He understands a certain amount about defensive coordination, though I think he needs to freshen up some of his ideas, quite frankly. But, that's once again for another show. I would love to see him take a little detour down to college for a while, maybe pick up some new ideas and then make his way back up to the NFL. Because he's, like I said, the game is passed him by is too strong a word, but the game is moved away from what he's best at.
Okay. Let's get into the playoffs here. Bill, the Clowns bring a knife to a Texas gunfight. The Texans spanked that ass 45-14. Fluco throws 2 pick sixes. They are who we thought they were. Am I talking about the Texans or the Clowns?
Well, maybe both. Here's what I will say about the Browns. They caught lightning in a bottle. Just to remind people, on the 31st of October, Joe Flacco was at his home handing out candy to trick-or-treaters, right? He thought it might be over for him. He thought he might never play another down in the NFL. He still wanted to play, but nobody called him. It took a series of injuries and other unfortunate incidents to give him an opportunity to play again, and he took it, and he ran with it. He's always had a big, strong arm. He's always been a guy that's kind of a rip it and rip it kind of guy. And when it's hot, it's really, really hot. And when it's not, it's really, really not. But he's fun to watch. And I think he'll have a chance to make a nice couple of more years, decent living as a backup based on what people have seen. People got reminded of what Joe Flacco's capable of doing. But he's better in small dosages, right? If you've got a Joe Flacco or a Nick Foles, it's actually very comforting as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, as a quarterback's coach. That guy's going to be in the ear of your younger starter, building them up, letting them know, hey, this happens. You can do this. You can do that. You're going to be great, right? They're both good team guys. They're both supportive. They're both guys that have seen a lot. But do you want them to be your starter for 10 games or 12 games? Probably not. For a 4 or 6 game run, we've seen what Nick Foles can do. We've seen what Joe Flacco can do. Those are not bad players. Those are good players, but good players in smaller dosages. And they're going to figure some things out. They have a very expensive quarterback who has not come anywhere close to living up to expectations. They're going to, once again, they may play the, hey, would you like to restructure kind of game? They can't move on from him, right? It's too much money. The dead cap would wipe them out. They would end up having to cut 3 or 4 other players just to do so if they were moved on from him. So he's not going anywhere. Flacco, of course, may get a chance to test the waters. And like I said, there should be some teams that should call him. A guy who can do what he can do, even in short, even in 3 to 4 game spans, is a very valuable thing to have, especially if you're a team that you think might make a nice run and you lose your starter, knowing that you've got a guy like Flacco or Nick Foles, guys like that, Case Keenum, those top level backups. There's only a handful of them also. There's a big drop off from the don't make you all queasy and can't sleep at night backups to the, oh, Jesus, what I'm going to do backups, right? There's not only a handful of the ones that you don't feel bad about running out there, and then there's a big old drop off. So Joe Flacco, yeah, he'll have a chance to make some money this offseason.
Mr. Scott, what did you think of that Texans versus the Clowns game?
Well, Flacco can make some noise if he's got protection. I mean, if he's protected, he can make some noise. But once they saw that, I mean, he's not mobile. And so once they started going after him, that was pretty much, it was a done deal at that point. I mean, that's kind of how I saw the game. As Bill says, he's got some skills. He's got some talent. But whether he's going to go in somewhere at the beginning of a season and lead a team through 18 games, I don't think so. Not at this stage. But he did an admirable job. And Cleveland's just got to really feel terrible watching Baker Mayfield and watching how these things are going. And they're stuck with Mr. Massage. So I don't know.
Dave, any comments on Mr. Massage?
Well, I mean, not on Mr. Massage, but it's really not a surprise. Joe Flacco threw 8 interceptions in the 5 games that he played for the Browns before their playoff game, and then he just added 2 more in the playoff game. So it wasn't really a surprise. Now, for me, the Texans and what they did with that Cleveland's defense, even though Joe Flacco was helping the Texans, but even without Joe Flacco's help, with the pick sixes and that, still the Texans were doing their thing with Cleveland's defense, and so I think Stroud is really showing that he's something. He's performed well, and that young coach, I tell you, rookie coach, hats off to him. He's really done a marvelous job, because I really think at the beginning of the year, I didn't think the Texans were going anywhere. They had all these injuries to the offensive line and all this stuff, and they just persevered. They improvised, adapted, and they overcame, as the Marine Corps likes to say. So hats off to the Texans, and Joe Flacco, absolutely not a surprise. He already threw a bunch of interceptions, and it was only masked because Cleveland was winning those games. And once you get to the playoffs, sooner or later, you're going to be exposed.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Mr. Scott, 12 wins plus 5 losses equals 1 and done. Again, the phone booth becomes an x-ray machine as the real Dak Prescott is exposed. The Cowboys defense gives up 48 points. Mr. Scott, where did the Cowboys go from here?
Boy, I mean, that defense, that was just hard to believe. And then Dak, he seems to be becoming a Kirk Cousins. I mean, racking up all these points and yardage during the year, and then gets to the playoffs, and then his punches have no steam. I mean, and I have no explanation for all the talent on that defense to play like that. I really don't. But Dak just seems like, I mean, he's got CeeDee Lamb. He's got, I'm like Jerry Jones. I can't explain it. I mean, I just think he's becoming a Kirk Cousins. You get a lot of yards, you look good, you're all pro, but you get to the playoffs and your punches don't hurt anybody. I mean, I don't know what to think of it. I really don't. Where do you go from there? They say they're going to keep McCarthy. I think I just saw something where he's
McCarthy's coming back as the head coach.
Yeah, he's coming back, so they're not going to make a change there, and they've been making the playoffs every year. Boy, I can't move from Dak. It's too much money. You can't really, and you're not going to move from the coach. It looks like status quo.
What's your thoughts there, Dave? There was a lot of talk about Dan Quinn, interviewing for here and interviewing for there. Seems like that talk's a little silent now. At least it's not as prevalent as it was before that loss. But what do you think, Dave? Like I said, the defense gives up 48 points. Dak throws, his usual 2 interceptions. One is for a pick six.
How about them Cowboys? I didn't think Mike McCarthy was going to make it to the post-game announcement because I really thought if you embarrassed Jerry Jones enough, he was going to step in and cut it short. But they kept Mike McCarthy. It ruined the opportunity for the revenge of the Mikes. Mike Tomlin is head coach of the Steelers. Mike McCarthy is his offensive coordinator, and Mike Vrabel is the Steelers' defensive coordinator. But no, I mean, it's one thing. Yeah, the defense really fell through, but give some credit to Green Bay and Jordan Love. I mean, what was he like, 16 to 21? I mean, 3 touchdown passes. Had a very, surgical game. They just carved Dallas up, and so I mean, Prescott threw a couple interceptions and stuff, but at the same time, Green Bay came to play, and the offensive show by Jordan Love, I thought, was very impressive coming down to Dallas. So I guess what happened, we were all talking about before how December was when Dallas was going to implode, and that didn't really happen. Well, I guess they just delayed by a couple weeks and decided to implode at the beginning of January rather than December.
Bill, do we give Dallas points for consistency?
I've never been less surprised by the outcome of a football game in my life. It turned out exactly how I thought it would. I mean, when I did my they have like a little bracket thing, a little playoff bracket thing. This is one of the ones I felt very confident about. Like if you could put 100 confidence on something, I would put 100 confidence on it. It's not like this is surprising to us. It shouldn't be, at least. Every year, this team proves to us, if we ever doubted it, that they are, 1, still the Dallas Cowboys. 2, they've lacked and have lacked, what do we call it? Mental fortitude, toughness, pick a term. It's proven to us every year, and it's been proven to us every year for a couple of decades now. It's incredibly not surprising.
Bill, the Eagles turned to dodos in Tampa Bay. What changes do you predict in the city of brotherly love?
I think they're going to tweak some things in their offensive scheme. They're going to, well, frankly, a lot of people are retiring also. I mean, Fletcher Cox, even if he decides to play, will be playing somewhere else next year. Jason Kelsey may or may not have announced his retirement. I think he wants to formally announce it in a slightly different situation. I think he said it to some people privately, and then they couldn't keep their mouths shut. So he's now denied it, sort of, kind of, so he could announce it, I don't know, on his podcast with his brother. I don't know. He's going to announce it soon. We all kind of know this. And Brandon Graham is not going to be back, but they draft well in Philadelphia with those that hurt. Nolan Smith, you saw him in small dosages. You're going to see a lot of Nolan Smith next year. He and Hassan Reddick and Mr. Sweat are going to move up, right? Like in the rotation on a volleyball court, fill the holes of those older players. We'll see if Jalen Carter and Jordan. Now, I was never high on Jordan Davis, so maybe I'll be proven wrong. I was not as sold on him as other people were. I think he's a part-time player. He struggled to play 27.5% of the snaps in college. Is he going to suddenly play 50 now? Okay. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. But either way, they're going to be a very different team, at least in part, just because of retirements, right? They're going to have to move on from some people just because they're done playing football. The ones that aren't quite done are going to have to do it someplace else because you're going to bring in these younger players. You've been stockpiling all this talent. You have to at some point let them play. I think they're going to add at least one solid to good, third receiver in free agency. The Julio Jones experiment was fun, but they need someone who is more flexible, for lack of a way of putting it, because you can ask Julio Jones to line up other places, but he's still basically an X receiver. He looks like a fish out of water when you ask him to do slot receiver things. So I think they're going to look for someone. I mean, let's say they go after a guy like Robert Woods. He's not a better receiver than Julio Jones. He's just a more flexible receiver. He's played all the receiver positions and done them fairly well. He's played Z, he's played X, he's played Y. In the system they ran in his time with both the Bills and his time with the Rams, he did it all, right? Because they need you to be sort of position agnostic. And that's not what Julio Jones used to be, right? He was the man at X for, a decade, and then you're asking him to be this complimentary player that's just not in his nature. And he tried. He was a good soldier about it, but I think they're going to have to find a better solution to that third wide receiver position. They have a good 4 in, Olamide Zaccheaus and a good 5 in Quez Watkins, but they need a 3. And so I think they're going to either in free agency or the draft or both try to address that position. And they need to find another corner to go with Darius. Darius Slay has at least 1 or 2 more good years left in it, but need to find his partner in crime. When Reed Blankenship is healthy, sadly they lost Sidney Brown, who was going to be a stud. He was going to be an absolute stud. He'll, I guess, be able to come back week 6 or something next year, 6 or 7 next year probably. But he tore his ACL very late in the season. That hurt them more than people realize. They had a couple of injuries because both Bayard and his replacement got hurt. And while people don't think about safeties as important, which bothers me, but you have to understand how much you are forced to simplify things in coverage when you're playing your third string safety, because that's what they were doing. When you have they had guys out there who were playing out of position. Avonte Maddox has played all the positions. So that's the one thing, and he missed a lot of time too. But he came back and he was able to play. Though he was 100%, he played in that game. They should be healthier, in the future. I mean, that's one big difference is they won't be as beaten up. They were a very beaten up team. Hurts was never healthy this year. People don't talk about it, but he was at no point this year was he healthy. You could tell. You could see he was never healthy this year. So assuming he's healthy and they, as they have done in the past, replace all the guys who are going to move on, they'll be just fine. People who are thinking, now there will be some questions about Sirianni, and he's a guy he's an emotional cat. Like, well, who would have guessed an Italian from the Northeastern Corridor? But he is a guy that picks fights with people. He's a guy that talks a big game. And if you're going to be that guy, you need to back it up. They're going to tweak the staff. They're going to tweak the scheme. But I don't think the Eagles are going anyplace.
What do you think, Mr. Scott? Do you see a lot of changes ahead for the Eagles? Bill mentioned the head coach. Do you see there being a change? We haven't, I asked last week, if they lost to the Bucks, would it cost Sirianni?
Well, I think they'll just, do some tweaking. I mean, they got a franchise quarterback. They don't know what happened, really. I mean, the team, the last half of the season, they just seem to just be in the valley of fatigue. I mean, they just seem to, whatever happened, it happened. So, I think they're going to regroup. They've got a franchise quarterback, like I say, so you can always build around that. So I think they're in the mix here. We got to worry about the Central Division. That's what you got to really worry about. You got to worry about that.
Okay. All right. Dave.
Yeah, well, I mean, to go from 10-1 and lose 6 out of your 7 last games, that is just epic. And it was interesting, listening to Bill talk about some of the injuries and stuff like that. Because I mean, all teams face that. And I mean, the Steelers, they were down, they were missing their top 4 safeties,
Right.
playing with like 56 guys.
Yep.
But I mean, I still think that there's something more to that story. There has to be some type of a backstory on that epic swoon. I mean, 6 out of those 7. Now, I love it for Baker Mayfield. I think it's fantastic. Every time he wins, I kind of going back to Mr. Massage, who Cleveland, I think just treated Baker Mayfield horrendously in what they did there. And I'm happy for him. And but it was like anything he threw up was going well. He was about to get sacked. He's on his back heel. He just throws the ball up. If the defensive back had just turned around, probably could have had a chance at intercepting the ball. Instead, it's a touchdown. I mean, it was just like destined for the Eagles to lose that game. For Sirianni, I think he was asked about whether his status as coach. I think in the post game, he was asked something like that, and I really hate that. I mean, it's right at the end of the game. I mean, your whole thoughts are on what just happened, and a lot of players that I know, and I know from the sports that I played. Right after a game, you're going through everything that just happened and saying and breaking down individual plays practically step by step. And all of a sudden be asked about your future. I think that that's the wrong time to do it. I know that the journalists have to ask the question, but I think that it's the wrong time to do it. And I mean, they still made the playoffs, and they were 10-1, and I would think it would be premature to cut bait with Nick Sirianni. It almost reminds me what the Chargers did with now I'm having a brain drain on his name. They had gone like 13-3, and then they fired their coach and a Pittsburgh guy, and I just don't understand that. I mean, it's kind of like you build up the success, kind of like Tony Dungy in Tampa Bay. He built this team, and then they fired him, and then they kept his coaches
because he knew they
and
were
then they
good
go
coaches.
and win the Super Bowl because Dungy wanted to hire Mike Tomlin in Minnesota, and Tampa Bay wouldn't let him have him, even though he was the one that hired him in the first place. So. I think it would be premature for Philadelphia to fire Nick Sirianni. It would be an entirely different story if Nick Sirianni, for some reason, said it's time for me to step down. Sometimes there's something involved, family matters, health, those types of things. But that's a different story. And I think that the ownership of Philadelphia, I think that they're in it for the long haul. So I don't see him being fired. Not quite yet.
Okay. Dave, running back Najee Harris says that there should be some changes in-house, including more discipline. Whether it's Mason or Mitch, someone has to lose their seat in the locker room. Is Kenny Pickett still a starting quarterback? Should the Steelers consider entering the Justin Fields or Russell Wilson sweepstakes? Tomlin's still under contract for 2024. Is there an extension coming, Dave?
All right. So I'll try to answer these in turn. First, I felt that Najee Harris's comments, I'd listened to those 2 or 3 times in a row because Mike Tomlin is pretty well famous for never losing a locker room. and the players almost universally support him. But the thing that caught my attention when Najee was giving his comments is he basically said, I brought this to the attention of Mike Tomlin, and he basically told me focus on being a running back. In other words, Mike Tomlin wasn't listening to him. And that was very revealing to me. Now, Cam Hayward was asked specifically about this, about Najee's comments and the need for new rules. And Cam Hayward just dismissed it. He said, these types of rules are not going to help us win games. It's our performance, it's our execution that are going to win games. And Art Moats, who played for both the Bills and the Steelers, he has a podcast, and he actually addressed this. And what Art Moats, basically said is that, Mike Tomlin's expectation is for the players to basically be self-disciplined. He's not there to babysit them on, hey, if you're late on this or if you don't do this. There's an expectation that you take care of it yourself. And a lot of that is left to the locker room, to the locker room leadership. So Art Moats' point of view was like, yeah, he could try to do that, but he would prefer to focus his time on prepping for the game and and working with the players on, hey, how are you going to improve your play on the field? Not these locker room things. So I think that and the other thing that Art Moats mentioned is, we were talking about Nick Saban earlier. Well, that's the environment that Najee comes from, and that's the environment that Najee knows. And he was elected the captain 2 years ago. The players didn't elect Najee captain this past year. So we'll see what happens. I don't think that the other thing with Mike Tomlin that I'll add is he gives freedom to the players to speak their mind. So I don't believe that there'll be any retribution for that, because Mike Tomlin actually encourages players to speak their mind. In terms of Mason or Mitch, I think Mitch is gone unless the only reason, and I doubt it, would be is if he took a minimal contract, and he was making like $5 or $6 million, and his performance, he didn't own up to the performance. He had the opportunity to earn his money, and he failed. With Mason Rudolph, he's scheduled to be an unscheduled free agent as of March, or at the end of the official end of the season. He performed very well, and now as a free agent, the Steelers, of course, are going to want to sign him back. But are they going to be able to afford to? There's a lot of teams out there that need quarterbacks, whether starting quarterbacks or backup quarterbacks. And for Mason Rudolph, I think right now he's proven enough where I think he's going to be getting some offers from other teams. And then it's up to the Steelers. Are they able to match that or to make it more interesting enough for him to stay? So I believe that he'll probably be gone. Not because he wants to be gone, but because money dictates that he'll be gone. So the Steelers are going to have to rebuild their quarterback room, because I think Kenny Pickett might be one of the only quarterbacks left from this year's room left next year. And so then that goes into the question about, do they look at Justin Fields or Russell Wilson or something like that? Well, their salary cap situation isn't the greatest.
Nope.
Now, Omar Khan, they can free up space if they have to. That's a possibility. If they were going to do it between Russell Wilson, I've never been impressed with Russell Wilson. When he was at Seattle, I think he was a product of that system. But I would rather have Justin Fields, who's still in his rookie contract, if he were available.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that Chicago would be nuts to let him go. Why would you do that? It doesn't make sense to me. So, but if he were available, given the two names that you put out there, I would rather have Justin Fields rather than, and I'm probably in the minority. A lot of people would love to have Russell Wilson. People have mentioned Kirk Cousins, but then it comes into affordability.
I was about
Can
to
you
say,
afford the-
you said you can't, if you can't afford Mason Rudolph, how are you going to get Kirk Cousins?
Well, there's a difference between being able to afford and what you're willing to pay. And I think in the
Okay.
case of Mason Rudolph, it's what would they be willing to pay him? Mike Tomlin, he did. Now he had an episode at his post-game conference at the end. I think it was Brooke Pryor started to ask him about the contract. He just walked off.
He stormed off the stage. Man, just asked him a question, and he just stormed off the stage.
Yeah, which is uncharacteristic of Mike Tomlin, but maybe he was doing that for effect, whatever. But basically, the next day, in his several players came out because he was doing his exit interviews with the players, and they said that he's coaching in 2024. He told them that he's coaching in 2024. So really, what the question is will he be signing an extension? I cannot imagine the Steelers going into the 2024 season with Mike Tomlin as a lame duck coach, namely because how are they going to attract a offensive coordinator of enough stature to help develop that team if you have a lame duck coach? Unless you're hiring somebody to take his place. But I think that the Steelers will offer him a contract. I think that Mike Tomlin has some leverage there, of course. And I don't think, despite the rumors, I don't think that he'll be stepping down. I think that he'll be signing an extension.
Agreed. Yeah. I would love to see us make a strong push after like Pep Hamilton. Stump Mitchell's available. I'd love to see him come in as like an associate head coach and running backs coach. There's so many good coaches available right now that I'd love to see us be very active and finally sort of go outside the Pittsburgh bubble. One last note on Arthur Motes, born in Norfolk, Virginia, grew up in Portsmouth, went to Churchland High School and James Madison University. Got to see him play in high school as well.
Nice. Well, I tell you what would drive Steelers Nation berserk is if they made an internal hire and either hired Eddie Faulkner or Mike Sullivan to be the offensive coordinator. They need to get somebody, because Eddie Faulkner has never coached anywhere but Pittsburgh. Yep. And neither did Matt Canada, and neither did Randy Fichtner before them. He needs to get an offensive coordinator that has experience, not necessarily being a coordinator with another NFL team, but has experience on being with another NFL team, so that they understand this is how teams scheme for the offense that I'm putting together.
Yep. But I mean, Pep Hamilton is a street free agent. I know Eric Bieniemy may or may not be getting head coaching opportunities, but if he doesn't get one, why would you not go after him hammer and tongs? I mean, there's so many good offensive coaches available right now. And for some reason, Alonzo Pep Hamilton is a street free agent. He's completely available. You'd have to wait for him because he wasn't on, no NFL team had signed him for the past year. So whatever.
All right, guys, let's get into our division round of the predictions here. Saturday, 20th of January, 1:30 p.m. We have the Texans +9 at the Ratbirds. The over-under is 43.5. Bill.
I will take the over. I think there'll be more points scored than people are expecting. And I do believe the Ravens win, but I don't think they cover. So I think they win that game by 7 points. So I guess technically speaking, I'm taking the Texans then.
Okay, and the afternoon game, 5:15, the Packers getting 9.5 at the 49ers, and the over-under is 50.5, Bill.
In this case, I'm going to take the under, and I'm still going to go with the underdog. In that, I think once again the 49ers win, but I think the game's closer than people think. I think that game is being very close. The Green Bay Packers are better than people believe, despite the fact that Mr. Scott's wearing a cheese head. Now, what helps them is, unlike some of the other teams we talked about, they're getting healthy. A lot of their injured players are now available. They had 3 different receivers miss 2 or more games this year, and now all of their receivers, for the first time since, I don't know, week 5 or something, are all available, right? Their entire receiver group is actually available. Wicks is available. Christian Watson's available. Jaden Reed's available. And this kid I really like, Bo Melton. If you're a dynasty fantasy player, if you have Bo Melton, that's a hold. If your friends are trying to offer you like a mid-round pick for Bo Melton, 3rd-round pick, turn them away. Bo Melton, when they eventually, one of those guys is too expensive, one of those guys I mentioned before is too expensive to hold on to, Bo Melton's going to move up and become a terrific slot receiver for them. They have once again, they draft well. They draft and develop talent well in Green Bay, and always have. That's been their modus operandi, going back to the late 1950s. But they had a down period in the 70s, obviously. But other than that little ugly 70s period, when they got good again in the 80s, they've pretty much been good consistently ever since. But yeah, I think that I think that they're going to make that game very close and very competitive.
Mr. Scott, the Texans +9 against the Ratbirds, over under 43.5.
Yeah, I got a text from a buddy in Baltimore yesterday. He said something about 6 inches of snow and everything was shut down in Baltimore. I hadn't really looked.
We got the snow. It wasn't even forecast. It was a complete surprise. Hitting the DC, Baltimore area.
Yeah, he said they woke up and it was just a whole new day. Yeah, a whole new day. So I just think Baltimore is going to the Super Bowl. I mean, I really do. I mean, I'd be shocked. And, you're always shocked. When you get to this level, this is like heavyweight fights. I mean, whoever thought Hasim Rahman, Oliver McCall, I mean, whoever thought they would, Hercules, Mike Weaver, John Tay, I mean, who would have thought any of those things would happen? So I got to go with Baltimore. And I got to take the points. I can't give up points like that, because the weather could. And I love Texans, love CJ. I love what they're doing. They're on the ascension, and could this be an upset? Oh boy, it's far fetched, but I'm taking the Texans and the points as far as the under and over. I'm going to take it over because I think that's how Baltimore plays.
What about the Packers there, Mr. Scott? Getting 9.5 at the 49ers, and the over-under is 50.5.
Boy, Bill made some great comments about the Packers. And one thing, though, people overlook Aaron Jones. I mean, he catches passes. He catches passes. Oh, and if they get A.J. Dillon back, too, I mean, this could get to be very, very interesting. I've got to take the 9.5 points, and I'll take the under.
Okay. Dave.
Well, I mean, the Ravens are capable of pummeling teams, just absolutely pummeling teams. But, I mean, 9 points, and I like what the Texans have been doing. I've really been impressed with the whole team, the way they've been playing. So, I think that the Ravens are going to win, but I'm going to take the Texans in the points like Anthony, and I'm going to take the under.
Okay. The Packers.
Well, the 49ers are another team. Yeah, the 49ers are another team very capable of hammering teams. Like they put away Philadelphia in that game a few weeks ago. Jordan Love has been playing very well. I think that they're very dangerous. But in this case, I'm going to take the 49ers. They got the rest. I'm going to take the 49ers, but I'm going to put the over in this game. I see some points being scored.
Okay. Bill, Sunday, we have the Bucks getting 6 at the Lions, and the over-under is 48.5.
I will take the over. I will take the Lions to cover. Sadly, Demetrius is not here. Uh, this is the one game that I think might get out of hand. The Buccaneers, I won't say they got lucky, but they played very, very well, and some things definitely went their way. I'll put it that way. And the Eagles came out flat. That will not happen to the Lions. They will not come out flat. I mean, Tampa might still get some things going their way, but I don't think nearly as many things will go their way. And I just feel like Detroit is clearly better at pretty much every single position I can think of, with the possible exception of linebacker and safety. Linebacker and safety is the only place where I can give the clear check mark to the. Okay, well, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mike Evans is kind of a wash. So I'll call that a draw, and I'll call linebacker and safety for the Bucks. But everything else, all the other check marks, offensive line, defensive line, just all the other check marks as you go on down the line, go to the Lions. I think this is the one game that might get out of hand. This is the one game that they win by double digits. It's a Lions game.
Okay, the Chiefs getting 3 at the Bills, and the over-under is 45.5.
I will take the over, and I will take the Chiefs. People somehow, I don't know, just told themselves that the Chiefs were over. You can move on from the Chiefs. They are used to being in tight situations, bad situations. I understand they're going on the road, but they've played a lot of bad weather games in Kansas City. I mean, unless there's somebody freaked out by the difference between Kansas City snow and Buffalo snow, which I guess is somewhat different. But the things that I think will help them, one is I trust their ability to get pressure without blitzing. I think that Josh Allen, who has played extremely well, is still a guy that every once in a while will give you a what the heck interception. And last but not least, both teams have started to lean more into their run game, but when it comes down to it, the run game I trust a little bit more. Well, except Josh Allen. But the one game I trust a little bit more is still Kansas City's. I think that Isaiah Pacheco has a good game. I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire chips in a little bit as well. And I expect at least one big trick play from Kansas City that works, that helps them to escape with a win.
Final thoughts, Bill?
Just very recently, we had, of course, Martin Luther King Day, and now we come to the 17th of January, which is Muhammad Ali's birthday, which is also Ben Franklin's birthday, which is also, that's another big one today. Michelle Obama. But most importantly, it is my sister, Belinda Sue Carroll's birthday. So somewhere out there, my baby sister, this is your birthday. This is, of course, an important event in American history. And so my final thought is that for all of us that have had the pleasure of being an older brother, I've had the pleasure of having a baby sister, a younger sister. There's nothing quite like it. It hopefully prepares you to deal with other challenges in life. My sister was incredibly intelligent from her earliest days. One of my favorite stories is when my sister was about 2.5 years old. A delivery driver came to the door, delivered something. And, she toddled out there, age 2.5, to, greet the gentleman and introduced herself. And her name was Valinda, Valinda, but he said Belinda, which, they are similar words. They are rooted in the same, Spanish root word. But she corrected him at 2.5 years old, spelled her name to him, and then pronounced it to him, Valinda with a V, Valinda, age 2.5. That is my sister in a nutshell. I love you, Valinda, and have a wonderful birthday.
Great thoughts there, Bill. Great thoughts there as a big brother. Mr. Scott, the Bucks getting 6 at the Lions, over under 48.5.
That's very interesting. I mean, could the NFC Championship come down to the Packers and the Lions? I mean, that is really, oh, what a great thing that would be. And that's extremely possible. Yeah, I'm gonna take the Lions, and I think it'll be an over. I mean, I really think the Lions are gonna really. This is their shot. I mean, they've been down. This is, I don't know where Demetrius is. I mean, they had a big win, and I guess he's traveling.
He's actually in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. You said he's traveling. So, but yeah, I'm going to take them, and then and the over. And boy, I just take Mahomes. I just really, it's just really hard. In these big games, it's just tough for me to go against him. I know they're on the road. It's going to be brutal there, cold weather. But I think the Chiefs are going to. I think the Chiefs are going to do their thing. I really do. And I'm going to take it under. I'm actually going to take it under the 45.5.
Ooh, okay. Your final thoughts, Mr. Scott?
Well, I guess with this cold weather and all, my final thoughts is getting out of here. It's really, yeah, I looked at Vegas. I said, well, maybe I'll go there and watch the Super Bowl, but it's not that warm there. Or so I may just go down to Miami and say the heck with it and just sit on the beach there and listen to the radio, because this is ridiculous here. But it does make me think about baseball. And I saw something in the paper the other day about the Twins now trying to get Luis Arraez back, and I'm like, well, I wouldn't have traded him in the first place. I mean, they did get a very good pitcher for him. Pablo Lopez, a great pitcher. But I'm thinking about the spring training and what are they going to do with Buxton? I mean, last year he never played the field one game. He was just a DH, and then he got hurt and couldn't play. So they've got to figure. And he runs into walls. He doesn't play smart in the outfield. He's got great speed. He should be getting on base, using that as part of his weapons. So I'm just kind of following the Twins. Maybe I'll go there for spring training. I don't know, but I got to get out of here. I mean, that's my final thought. I've got to get a break.
Hey, oh my goodness! You don't know where it is, but you got to get out of there. Huh? I hear you. Dave, take us home here. The Bucks +6 at the Lions, over under 48.5. Chiefs getting 3 at the Bills, over under 45.5.
Well, with the Lion, great game. That was the best game. I thought that Lions-Rams game.
Very good.
Hands down, that was the best game. And although I really like the Baker Mayfield story, I'm going to go with the Lions. I just think that they're the better team. I'm going to go in the over in that game. For the Bills Chiefs, what was interesting is the Bills had the game secured before the final whistle, but they mentioned they were really looking forward to Kansas City coming to Buffalo, because apparently the last 3 times that they played
in Kansas City. They
played in Kansas City, lost. And so they're really looking forward to hosting the Chiefs. And there's supposed to be more snow coming in. Although the weekend, it looks like it might be the forecast right now is saying that Saturday and Sunday should be clear, but they're going to be getting a bunch of snow Thursday and Friday. So that's going to be interesting. But I'm going to take the Bills in the under in that game.
Ooh, okay. I still like Patrick, and I have very little confidence in the Bills, especially that running game. But we'll see. So, Dave, your final thoughts?
Yeah. So, attending the game wasn't completely pleasant. I mean, of course, the Steelers lost. That was the big thing for me. But during the game, a lot of smack talk being talked. Had a young kid like yelling in my ear for a good part of the game until the season ticket holder that actually had those seats came and sent them away. Somebody threw some melted cheese at me. It missed. and it hit a Bills fan that had a blue jersey on. And I don't know how, because it was cold, but it missed me. And then the snowballs. They had warnings all over the place, and they were putting them up on the billboard. We're going to videotape. If you're caught throwing snowballs, you're going to be escorted out of the stadium and blah, blah, blah. And they were just they hit a security guard on the field. They were throwing them at Steelers players on the field. Nobody was held accountable for that. But I'm not going to judge those few Buffalo Bills fans. I'm not going to judge all Buffalo Bills fans based on the actions of those few people there. The vast majority of the Bills fans that I met and that I interacted with in Buffalo were very nice, very hospitable. And I think it's important to remember that everybody kind of highlights the negative experiences that they have. And then the natural reaction is then you associate that with that entire group of people. And although I had a couple bad interactions with a few of these Buffalo Bills fans, the vast majority were very good people. And I think it's important for people to remember, look at the majority and at the goodness and the hearts of most people, and don't attribute the actions of the few, the negative actions on the few, and project that on everybody else. So that's my final thought for the day. So, because actually I had a great weekend despite the Steelers losing.
Hey, that's always good to hear, and always good to hear stories about good sportsmanship and just camaraderie between fans.
And on that note, I may be going over to Wisconsin to watch the game. I'm thinking about just driving across the river. There's a little bar there where, they have I had a hamburger in there once. It's just like, it just melted in my mouth. I said, where do you guys get this? He said, well, there's the farmer lives next door, and he's a butcher. So we get all of our meat directly from him. And I'm like, unbelievable. And so I may just go over across I think it's going to be lightening up weather-wise, and I can get out of the ice box and maybe go over and wear my regalia over in Wisconsin.
Well, I hope you wear your purple regalia with the headgear that you have on now.
Keep them guessing.
Mr. Scott, will there be another wager bet on this game?
Let's see. Did I win last week? I think I did.
No, I think you lost. Didn't you take Demetrius took the Lions and you took that other team, I believe.
About points. I am very vague on if it was such a spirited discussion.
We're going to have to bring out the replay on you there, Mr. Scott. All right, guys. Well, hey, looking forward to talking to everybody next week. Demetrius should be back. Reggie should be back. Hopefully, Bo. And hey, this is probably I think everybody should mark this on the calendar. This is the earliest we've ever been off of this show in how many years, Bill?
Well, for me, I think this is year 4, which is good because my new job has a much longer commute, and I have to leave the house by like 5-something in the morning. So I'm very glad we closed it out.
I used to call it a small but rowdy crowd.
All right, guys. See everybody next week. Talk to you,
everybody.